One candidate wants to continue on a path of social liberalism. Another wants to ban the Quran and close mosques. Dutch voters are heading to the polls on Wednesday. So what will a possible far-right win mean for the Netherlands and Europe? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Seeker. The Netherlands has long been known as a country of socially liberal values, but the recent refugee crisis and anti-immigrant sentiments have led to the popularity of far-right groups. On Wednesday, Dutch voters will decide between two starkly different candidates and parties. The vote is one of several taking place across Europe this year, including in France, Germany and perhaps Italy. And it will be the first test for how well far-right candidates will do. The latest opinion polls suggest the Dutch People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, led by Prime Minister Mark Rutte, and the far-right Party for Freedom, led by Geert Wilders, are in a tight race. Both advocate very different agendas. The People's Party is progressive on social issues and fiscal austerity, while the far-right, whose leader has called Moroccan immigrants scum, wants to close mosques and pull the Netherlands out of the European Union. With 150 seats up for grabs in the Dutch parliament, the new government is likely to be made up of at least 4 to 6 different parties. As we mentioned earlier, the People's Party for Freedom and Democracy is led by Prime Minister Mark Rutte and has held a majority in parliament since 2012. The Labour Party is headed by Lodewijk Asscher. He is the Deputy Prime Minister but has faced criticism for his austerity measures. The Socialist Party is led by Emiel Roemer and focuses on policies including affordable healthcare. Simbrand van Heersma-Buma leads the Christian Democratic Appeal Party and wants significant reforms of the European Union. Far-right leader Geert Wilders heads up the Populist Party for Freedom, which has gathered momentum among Dutch voters in this year's campaigning, capitalizing on growing nationalist and anti-Muslim sentiment. And Alexander Pechtold is rallying to increase the Democrat stance in government with policies including the legalization of production of cannabis. And one of the main issues for many in the Netherlands is immigration. Multiculturalism is thriving in urban centres, but it's creating problems in the suburbs, as Dominic Kane reports.
To look at Utrecht on Saturday, you might not think a general election is looming, but on Wednesday, voters here and across the country must decide who represents them. It's suggested that socially, this city is like a model of the Netherlands in miniature, where populist parties vie with the mainstream parties to win votes. Josse de Vogt is a leading electoral scientist living in Utrecht. He believes the main political divide in his city and increasingly in his country is between urban and suburban voters.
So Josse, what is so distinctive about this area that we've come to that's different perhaps from elsewhere?
Compared to all the other parts of Utrecht and the suburbs around, this is an area with a very high percentage of PVV voters. Also of the number of voters of the SP, which is a left-wing populist party. So that makes it very different, because in the inner city of Utrecht the percentage for the PVV is very low. But here in this lower middle-class suburb, at the edge of the town, it's much higher.
The Freedom Party has campaigned hard against multiculturalism, touching a chord for a section of society. But if people here are considering voting for it, few want to discuss it on camera. One resident agreed to explain to me what was in his mind before Wednesday's vote, but only if we protected his identity.
If you look at all the problems, then you tend to lean to the PVV of Geert Wilders. But a lot of people won't admit to that. They also think, well, which other party on the right could I vote for? But those right-wing parties are really small, and so you ask yourself, if I vote for them, how much power will they have to do things for me?
The contrast between that voters' concerns and those of people living in the big cities is stark. Enrique Fransens has lived in Amsterdam all his life. He feels multiculturalism is an established fact, but he understands integration can worry some people.
If you look at the history of Amsterdam, we have always accepted many foreigners. and they have shaped the culture. So in a way we know how to live next to each other, we know how to treat each other.
Quite how they treat the parties in this election will become clear on Wednesday night. Dominic Kane, Al Jazeera, Amsterdam.
Well, let's bring in our guests now. In Amsterdam, we have Professor Jan Kleinenhuis from the Free University of Amsterdam. He is a specialist in political communication and has studied the political discourse and media coverage of this election. From Utrecht, joining us on Skype, we have Matthias Rodin. He is a political sociologist at Utrecht University and a specialist on the rise of populist radical left and radical right parties. Also in Amsterdam, Saïda Derazi. She is an organizer of the March 21st Committee, which fights racism and discrimination, and is a member of the collective against Islamophobia in the Netherlands. Good to have you all with us. So Jan Kleinenhuis, what do you see then as the main issues for Dutch people in this election, and are they being accurately reflected in the media coverage there?
Yes, I think so. The first issue for the Dutch is clearly asylum seekers and refugees. This is clearly due to the refugee crisis of last year. And the next, that's more surprising, is norms and values in a new way. It's about the freedom to speech, the freedom of speech against, in a certain way, the freedom to be free of Muslim fundamentalists. So it's against the freedom of religion, it's against the freedom of association. And there's a new fight going on. And this has been on the agenda, presumably as a result of the process against Geert Wilders. Many people would say that at least he should have the right to say it. And it is then usually something racist, and that's a major issue in Dutch politics. It also occurred in discussions about a children fest, whether this would be racist or not. And then we see that leftist issues are much less important than in previous campaigns, which means that the Socialist Party really has a very, very hard job in this campaign.
Matthias Rodin, one of the things that struck me in looking at the Dutch political scene is the fragmentation of the politics. There's so many political parties. I think I read that there was at least 28 of them contesting this election, and that's something that's been steadily rising. What do you put that down to? Is it all down to the rise of populism on both the left and the right?
Well, it's not only about that. It's also about the increased volatility. So. In the past, in the Netherlands, Dutch voters were really loyal to one specific party. So if you were born as a child in a social democratic family, you were likely to go to a school with social democratic values. You were a member of a social democratic union. You read a social democratic newspaper and voted for the Social Democratic Party. It's not like that anymore. Now the Netherlands is one of the most electorally volatile countries in the world. And one of the results is that indeed the political system or the party system is strongly, strong fragmentation. And in the past we had 2 or 3 large parties. Now we have 6, 7, or maybe even 8 medium-sized parties. So there are no large parties anymore, and that has large consequences for how to form a government coalition.
Saïda Derazi, Netherlands has traditionally been this very socially liberal countries, at least to outsiders, and historically it's been very welcoming of immigrants. Does it surprise, should it surprise a lot of people then that there is this rising anti-immigrant rhetoric and Islamophobia in the country? How do we understand that?
Well, actually, as what we see here is not a first phenomenon. This has been going on already since it's a process of, say, at least 12 years now, or maybe longer. Since 9/11, it has been the Islamophobia has been used to put the political and form the political agenda right now. So for us, it's not a new phenomenon. What is new is that the left parties are using the same rhetoric. So this is actually what I'm going to say about this.
Jan Kleinenhuis, this is the first election in a European country in 2017. So in that sense, it's being seen throughout Europe as a kind of test case for the political sentiment in the country and all of this talk of the rise of populism and nationalism. How much do you think that the Netherlands is kind of a reflection of what's going on throughout Europe?
I think it's a complete reflection. I think the refugee crisis was central in every European country, but also in the Netherlands. It was in the Ukraine referendum of last year, of 2016, that many voters voted against the treaty, also because they were against immigrants. And also against the European Union and against everything which is outside of the Netherlands. And what you see is that you see the same forces in Brexit in a certain way. And the sentiment is then that as long as your own wages are not high enough, you should be, it's very difficult for employers to say no to cheap labor from outside. And that has been a major issue in the Netherlands since then. It's the rhetoric of Angela Merkel, who said Duitsland is a wohlhabendes Land. That's an affluent country. But many people who do not feel that affluence feel attracted to more right-wing parties. On the other hand, we might conclude that the PVV, in spite of this sentiment, didn't gain a lot of momentum in this campaign. Even in the polls right now, they are below the 2010 height of 24 seats. It may be the case that due to the riots this weekend with Turkish youngsters, the PVV might grow a few seats. But even then, it's only about 1/6 of the Dutch voters and not the majority of Dutch voters who will vote for the PVV.
Matthijs Roden, what's your view on that? To what extent do you see this, what's happening in Holland, as a bellwether of the political landscape across Western Europe?
Well, I think that what we see happening in the Netherlands is what we also see in other Western European countries. And there is a very fertile breeding ground for radical right-wing populism in the Netherlands, but also in these other countries, because of the refugee crisis, because of terrorist attacks in Europe, because of the Brexit, because of the election of Donald Trump. And that means that the topics that these radical right-wing parties focus on are really salient in the public debate. So there's a lot of discussion, as Jan Kleinenhuis already said, about issues like identity, European integration, security. And that's very good news for these radical right parties. But I also agree that it's also the case that it's true that the PVV was leading the polls. Now it's not that successful anymore. It's second after the conservative liberals of Mark Rutte. So it's also pretty interesting that while the breeding ground is very fertile, it's not that successful right now. It's only about, it will only gain about, well, maybe 20 or between 20 and 25 seats. And that's not too large.
Saïd Drazi, if we look at Geert Wilders, the far-right politician, even if he does have a strong showing in this election, all the indications are that none of the main parties will work with him at all. So that will just leave him. That will still leave him out of government. So it'll be kind of a protest vote. What is that? I mean, is he still able to influence policy in that respect? Is he still able to shape the political discourse?
Yes, of course it is, because he is actually influencing all the other parties. So you see that like the VVD or the other right parties are getting more extremer than they already were. So they're using the same language that he does, the same rhetoric that he does. And for the Muslim people or the Muslim community over here, not only I believe them, but also the people who do not vote for VVD, it comes over as Dutch people are getting more racist and more extremist on the far right behalf, and people are getting more scared and more uncomfortable by living in this country. So that's how we can be still influencing.
If the ruling party led by Prime Minister Rutte were to prevail here, how does the concerns that you bring up, how is he going to deal with that?
Yeah, well, actually, what we have seen of our Prime Minister over here in Holland, Premier Rutte, that he is now using the same languages as the Mr. Wilders does. So he's actually supposed to be the Prime Minister of all the Dutch people. And since we are here in Holland already having like 4, 5, and even sometimes 6 generations of Muslim people, he's still using the language that even the 6th generation has to participate and does not have the same rights as a native Dutch person over here. So that makes Muslim people feel very uncomfortable, since they are here Dutch citizens and they are participating in the society. And I myself believe that personally I find it very not nice of a Prime Minister to polarize the whole situation that is going through, since Muslim people are citizens of this country.
Jan Kleinenhuis, with all this focus on nationalism and immigration, these issues that are coming at the expense of other concerns, what is not being discussed in this campaign from what you've seen?
What doesn't get that much attention is how to have a good policy for people who do not feel that affluent. And that's a very difficult choice, of course. And I think that Martin Schulz in Germany does a very good job on that. He also tells, like Angela Merkel, that Germany is a very strong country. So they can afford also to help their own people. And this is what the Labour Party in Holland also tried to do by saying that if we raise wages and we make flex work not that attractive to employers, we can have a better situation for our own employees. But nevertheless, the main feeling is that the immigrants are a threat for the labour market. And I agree with the previous speaker that indeed many parties switched a little bit to the rhetoric of Geert Wilders. And this is especially true after the last weekend, in which the Dutch were very afraid that a Turkish minister would come to the Netherlands and speak to Turkish youth, because that would have indeed signaled that many Turkish voters in the Netherlands feel more Turkish than Dutch. And television has been much reluctant to show Turkish youngsters shouting Allahu Akbar and several things, or that in the flag of the Dutch embassy in Ankara was stolen, because they are afraid of this feeling. And what it raises then is indeed a policy which is more anti-immigrant than it was before. I think that the PVV always had the issue of double passports in the Netherlands. They were severely against it. But now, after the riots of yesterday, even the Christian Democrats are saying that the association treaty with Turkey should be off hands, so that the issue of double passports will become an issue again.
Matthijs Roden, just talk to us a little bit more about how you think this whole debate over immigration and this rising tide of immigration among some people in the Netherlands is shaping all of the parties and how they present themselves to voters.
Well, we can very clearly see that basically all mainstream parties have become more restrictive towards immigration and more hesitant when it comes to European integration. That's something that is happening in the Netherlands, but also in other Western European countries. Basically, the whole party systems in Western Europe are shifting to the right when it comes to social-cultural issues like immigration and European integration. And you can see it pretty clearly now what is happening in the Netherlands. The Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, He has said during a television program last summer, he argued that he basically said that immigrants, if they were criminals or if they behaved in a way that they shouldn't, they should get out of the country. Now he says during the campaign, act normal or leave. So he is really becoming more restrictive towards immigration, focusing more strongly on the issue of national identity. And you can also see the Christian Democrats do something like that. The example of Jan Klein-Nijenhuis just gave, but also, for instance, they propose to focus more strongly on sing the national anthem, for instance, on schools. And even the Social Democrats, so the center-left parties, they focus increasingly on issues of identity. The leader of the Social Democrats, for instance, has argued that we should focus more strongly on a progressive patriotism. So this whole issue of national identity, of restrictive policy towards immigration, skepticism towards Europe, that is, it's not only a part of the rhetoric of Geert Wilders, but it's also spreading towards the discourse of other parties.
Saïda Derazi, how do you and the people you work with counter this narrative on nationalism and anti-immigration?
Well, actually, we from the collective we are having we started noticing that there were lots of Muslim people having problems in society, and especially on racist attacks and discrimination, like for example on employment. So we started having our own hotline and started counting all the attacks on Muslims. On the other hand, of the collective against the 21 March committee, we are doing a protest next Saturday against racism and discrimination, but also to ask the parliament for a good formation on behalf of the campaigns of the elections. That's 18 March this Saturday. So yeah, that's what we do, and we do also encourage Muslim people to report all the attacks that they are experiencing, also by the police and other institutions. So yeah, but there's lots of work to do, and we're still not finished with it.
Matthijs Rutte, just on a practical level, what seems to be new in this particular election is that the polls are showing at least 6 or 7 parties could gain more than 10% of the vote. What implications could that have for forming any coalition government? How long is it going to take to form a viable government there?
Well, it's very difficult to say how long it's going to take, but one thing is pretty certain. In the past, we always had like 2 or 3 parties that formed a government coalition. That's not going to be possible, especially because basically all parties have ruled out collaboration with Geert Wilders. So it's going to be a government of 5 or maybe even 6 parties. And it's going to be difficult to form such a government because the parties that will be in such a government strongly differ from each other in terms of their policy proposals. So that's going to take quite some time, I guess. What another consequence of such a government coalition will be is that we will have a coalition, a very large coalition of most likely mainstream parties. And that will be a new ammunition for Geert Wilders to make the argument that there is an establishment which is colorless and which doesn't listen to him and thereby not to ordinary citizens. So basically a coalition of center parties without Geert Wilders is really good news for Geert Wilders, because he can then again make the populist claim that there is an establishment that doesn't listen to him.
All right, on that note, we're going to have to leave it. Thank you to all 3 of you, Jan Klein-Nijenhuis, Matthijs Rutte and Saïda Derazi. Thanks very much for being on Inside Story. And thank you for watching. As always, you can see this program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. For me, Hazem Sika, and the whole team here, bye for now.